I want to continue with the innovation mindset idea. The next session that we have coming up, going to bring up Dr. Ehrlich, who has a panel of people who are investors, have been working in the marketplace today, and Michael, Dr. Ehrlich, my friend Michael, I'll let him introduce his panel. Come right up, my friend.
Sure. Thank you very much.
All right, there you go. It's all yours.
Okay, so I'm going to invite the panel to come right on up, actually. So Catherine, Kim, Sarush, come on up. Let you take the comfy seats. Actually, I suppose there's four of us, actually. I could even take a comfy seat. I could take a comfy seat myself. So this is a panel on about angel investors. We all have experience, deep experience. It's an excellent panel. I'm going to take a minute to introduce myself, and then we're going to give everybody on the panel a chance to introduce themselves. And I think I'm actually going to sit and pretend I'm a grown-up sitting in one of the comfy seats. Okay, so my name's Michael Ehrlich. I started my career on Wall Street. I had about a 15-year career on Wall Street, ended as a senior managing director at Bear Stearns. I left there to become an entrepreneur. With my wife, we had a company that was very, very successful until it wasn't, and then we rebuilt it and sold it, which when I came here to NJIT. I've been here for about 11 years. I really worked hard to build this entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Newark and at NJIT in Northern Jersey and the metro area. Great thanks to Jerry Creighton for putting together this fantastic event. Great thanks to Judith Sheft, who's been my partner and PI and co-PI on a zillion of these projects and grants we've worked on together to really build out some wonderful things here in Newark. What probably qualifies me to moderate this panel is that I just did the calculations. I made my first angel investment 37 years ago. Yep, I was pretty young when I made my first angel investment, and I have all the scars to show for it for the ones I've made since then. But what we have here is a terrific panel who have experience on both sides of that angel investor aisle. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and maybe they'll also tell us a little bit about kind of what they're looking for in investments or what they think makes for investment success. Catherine, do you want to kick us off?
I'm Catherine O'Neill. I'm the Executive Director of Jumpstart New Jersey Angel Network, which is like the largest angel investor network outside of New York Angels between here and D.C. So we're active investors in a region from Connecticut to Virginia. We have about 40 members, actively investing in all sorts of areas except food, fashion, and drugs. So there's no fun at our parties. And if you want to talk to me about food, fashion, or drugs, I say, no, we're just not interested in that space. No one's going to invest in it from our group, so pass on to another group. I'm also active in Philadelphia with the Broad Street Angels, which is a new angel group out of the Union League in Philadelphia, and have my own history as working as an executive in large corporations. I came to Philadelphia to go to Penn for grad school, and then ended up working for what was FMC. At their division level, so working in a lot of different kinds of businesses and planning and forecasting and operations, and then being recruited away to what's now GlaxoSmithKline, but one of its early iterations. So international experience in lots of different business within a Fortune 100 company, with great experience for me. When one of the acquisitions of Beecham to SmithKline was made, all the jobs went to the UK. All the senior financial jobs went to the UK. So I said I would I'll work for another firm. I did some interviews. And then someone came to me and said that they had an acquisition to do. I said, piece of cake, which is my favorite response. And did that, and then started doing a lot of consulting for early stage companies, assisting them with funding, acted as interim CFO or CEO, and really then was later asked to run Jumpstart, which has been quite a few years now. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing the variety of companies, and as Randall Pinkin mentioned, the wave of change is just rolling across everything right now. We're so close to it at the early stage investor. So what investors are looking for is someone, you may think it's the shiny object at the heart of your business, but we're really looking at you. Can you make this stuff happen? And that's going to be a critical theme when you talk to investors, so it's really important to know that.
Suresh, give us a little sense of the other side.
Yep, absolutely, definitely the other side. It's great to be here. Thanks so much. Just want to mention, so Michael is an investor in our company. Kim is, Catherine's group is absolutely an investor. So basically, the name of our company is Event Combo. My name is Suresh Goel. And just some context on my background. So I was at JP Morgan Chase prior. And if anyone has a Chase account, Quick Pay was my product. So basically all the technical and functional and even the business deliverables for that multi-billion-dollar product I was responsible for. Founded Event Combo in 2014, 2015. And basically and it's funny to hear Randall say the things he was saying in response to the, being a second player in a big market. So we are that, right? Eventbrite is the primary player in our space. And so there were many other ticketing companies out there. I think there's like 1.5 million ticketing companies out there. I'm exaggerating, of course. We didn't want to be another ticketing company. So we basically took all the key ingredients that Eventbrite has, and Eventbrite, in my opinion, is the only successful self-service ticketing company. All the others are not successful, in my opinion. So we took all those key ingredients from the significant player in our space, and we basically refined them and improved them. The fact of the matter is that our space has not evolved in 10, 11, 12 years. People today do exactly what they did more than a decade ago, which is buy tickets. So the idea was, do more with ticketing at the point of transaction when people have their wallets out and they're committing to make a transaction, a purchase for an experience. So we are tapping into what attendees are doing before and after the event itself. And as a result, we are bringing in the event organizer who basically is responsible for that entire event economy. Uber makes money from these events, Lyft makes money from these events, restaurants make money from these events, on and on it goes. But event organizers don't see a single cent from those ancillary transactions. So what we basically did is, through technology, is consolidated the entire event ecosystem into Event Combo. So we launched, many of you here obviously bought tickets on Event Combo. We launched our partnership with Uber earlier in the year. We launched Lyft in September, and on we go. So just basically, the point that Randall was making and a few folks here acknowledged, we are the secondary player now, but we're definitely on our way to becoming a successor to the predecessor. And I have a lot more comments around the investment side of things as well, but that's a little bit of an introduction to myself and our company. Thank you.
Kim, you get to...
My name is Kim Go. I don't have much to add to my bio, except that I want to say that when I came to this country many years ago, with $68 in my pocket and two Leica cameras, that was my down payment for my first semester tuition. I've been looking for chasing American dream, and still chasing it. I spent a good number of years in large corporations, primarily in the technology and operation area. And I started out with a brief stint in credit card company and American Express in the international marketing area, and then spent most of my career cutting my teeth in Citibank. I actually have been in every phases of the institutional investment banking operations. I was part of the early pioneers of translating all the operations into a fee-based business. So, of course, you now know that today fee is a very important part of banking business. And then I moved to Chemical Bank, and I was head of the retail operations for the entire company. In other words, anything that moves from checks to the trucks in the corporation. I spent 5 years there before it was merged with Manny Hanny. At that time, I was recruited by my ex-boss from Citibank, who became a CEO of Medco Containment Services. He took me out to dinner one day and said, "Have you considered changing your career?" I said, "Rick, what the heck do I know about pharmaceutical? You know, I spent all my years in financial services." But he said, his answer was that, "Well, so did I. So, you know, after all, I'm just a CEO here." Yeah. So I did join. Little do I know that 3 months later, Merck bought us. Now, of course, in the negotiation for my compensation package, you know, each time I asked for more salary, they instead they gave me more options. And it wasn't worth anything because the PE ratio was 93. This is one way to go is down. And 2 months later, Merck bought us. And then I look at that options again. It was Merck options. So I luck out on that. And yes. So I left with a newfound financial independence. I invested in my first independent investment. Didn't know anything about angel investment, nor for that matter VC. I lost big time there. The lesson I learned from there was that it ain't over until it's over. So don't count your chicken before it's hatched. And there's a reason for that. And I'll leave it for discussion later on. So at the end of the day, I'm an accidental VC. And before you know it, it's already 18 years have gone by. Sometimes the more I learn, the more I feel that I have 18 times 1 year experience. Well, since our fund is on the tail end of the life cycle, almost 6 years ago, I morphed into angel investment, in which I joined Jumpstart also. And I pick up about 10 portfolios ever since. The question you asked was, so what makes me want to go into venture investing? And I think over the years, I've gone know how to manage the risk. And it's my blood. I still want to chase that dream. And have to say that I've been lucky. Luck played a big part in it, although substantive issues of how do you assess a company is also very important. At the end of the day, I invest in the jockey. You know, sometimes a good jockey riding a donkey can win the race.
I like that quote. I like that quote.
So, you know, I will leave it aside from the question and answer, then we can dive into some of the issues and how I look at it, a deal. In the main, not that those I would call hard attributes are not important. They are important. Each time you decide, if I have to fight with my brain and my gut, I will take my gut as a guiding light. And each time I try to convince my gut, I get kicked in my butt.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is try to get to some real examples, and let's talk about some of the experiences that you've all had. Let's start with you. We're going to give you all the same question, but let's talk about one of the great successes of your investing experience, and Suresh, you can talk about it sort of from the other side about how you got to a great success. But Kim, why don't you start us off? Like, tell us about what was the magic behind one of your great successes?
You look at issues on both the hard side and the soft side. Usually, I would say the soft side, the right brain works a lot better than the left brain. And not that in a hot deal in a hot market is not important. Mostly, I look at a company with a good CEO, as Dr. Pinkett was saying.
Is there a specific example that you could actually bring to the fore?
Oh yeah, I said first of all, I bring an example of a loss. I lost $1.5 million in my first investment, and the reason was very simple. The deal was the acquisition deal was almost consummated, approved by the board, and accepted acquiring company did a financial transaction that did a sales leaseback, sold all the assets, and to lease back the asset. The company that leased the asset, that acquired the asset, went bankrupt. So that was the last that moment of exit. It failed, and that's why I said the lesson is that you don't count your chickens before they hatch. I have many successes. In fact, you've heard of Constant Contact, and that was my deal. And I liked the CEO. And after we IPO, everybody exited and cashed out at 19-1. I held on to it. I was lucky. I got it 27-1. And because I happened to like the deal, and I think the market was good for it. And there are a lot of good deals that you don't really have to do much. I invested with a co-partner in Moat, M-O-A-T, 5 years ago. And I was lucky. Oracle acquired it, and I got an 84-1 return. And I also invested in Juicero. Yeah, we lost that one. Another one just happened not too long ago in New Jersey. Slight Joy, the Korean company. The CEOs, instead of building an office, got a condo, 5 people, working round the clock. 3 would do coding and 2 would sleep, and around the clock like that. And before you know it, last year we were acquired by a Korean company, and is on its way to IPO. So these are the few successes I had, and I have also dabbled with in advertising. In fact, that's not my specialty. I drifted to it 5 years ago, wanting to find out what it's all about. And luck at it, for 3 out of 4 did very well, and 1 I'm still nurturing it.
All right, so let's move to Sarush, and maybe you can tell us about how you got to be a success, and what was that magic?
There's still a ways to go, Michael. There's still a ways to go. Basically, by show of hands, how many investors do we have in the room versus entrepreneurs? So investors first, okay, and entrepreneurs, I'm assuming, is the rest of the gang. Okay, great. That helps for context. So basically, first of all, I'm just very privileged to have, in my opinion, these heavyweights that have invested in us. Kim, Catherine's group, and yourself, Michael. It certainly wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight, right? In Kim's case, it was a multi-year process. There's a story behind that, but my takeaway is that, and everyone already has an idea of what I'm about to say, because it's common knowledge that if you're fundraising, there's 2 ways you can go about it. And most people, when they start fundraising, kind of just attack everybody and ask for money, and find that that you're not going to end up getting any checks. And I went through that whole process where you have to establish relationships. And from personal experience, and specifically in Kim's example, like I said, it was a multi-year process. And Kim put his effort forward to also get to know me better. But I noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting with an idea and starting to fundraise, they don't run parallel to the targeted investors. They kind of run like perpendicular to them, and that doesn't work. And what I mean by that example is that instead of writing a cold email or a phone call or whatever and saying, hey, this is my company, we're looking for this much money, the approach that actually does work is not asking for money, and first identifying the investor and what their appetite is, around how much they invest and what areas they invest in. So a lot of entrepreneurs, again, I'm guilty of this when I started raising money. Basically just, okay, investor, I'm going to attack. No, you have to do some due diligence on the investor. You have to find out what the previous investments of that investor were, and you should also seek out other CEOs, other founders that investor invested in, and talk to them. So there's this entire process that actually happens before you fundraise that no one really talks about, and I had to learn it the hard way. And basically, my example is fortified by the gentleman sitting to my left. I had reached out to Kim, and he spent some time analyzing the opportunity and basically shut me down. And didn't shut me down nicely. Kim shut me down pretty, in a blunt way, I guess, right? And it was fine. It was a good experience. We stayed in touch. And fast forward about 2 years later, and Kim is one of our largest investors, right? So that story tells you that relationship building, and again, it's both ways, right? It's not just me. Kim also invested in the relationship and got to know me better, and so forth. So my initial messages for being on the other side, so to speak, for fundraising is you have to do the pre-work before you start doing the work to fundraise. And again, that's lost on many people, and you end up wasting months, if not years, of your life if you don't, follow a certain methodology to start doing fundraising. And I have more stories to share that hopefully will entertain you guys. But yeah, Michael, that's a key takeaway.
I'm gonna add into that, because how many times do we meet each other before you even got to pitch?
Thank you for reminding me, Catherine. So same situation. So I chased after Catherine. I practically stalked her for a good amount of time. I wouldn't admit how long, but a good amount of time. And this speaks to the way, and now Catherine, if everyone knows, probably gets hundreds of pitches, thousands of pitches from many, many great companies and entrepreneurs. And being a human being, no one has the bandwidth to assess each opportunity. So initially, that was my approach. But as I found over time was that, you can't just say, hey, give me an opportunity to pitch. I basically established a relationship with Catherine, with some of the Jumpstart investors, and the softer, more natural approach is what ended up, proving successful for us. So really good point, Catherine, right?
Yeah, and actually, too, every time we saw each other, he had some new news in terms of progress, because he was very, very early. He didn't have a lot of traction, and so that was too early for him to come to Jumpstart, because the answer would have been no. So that's part of this process, too. And Sarush is right, because a lot of times we like to have people who know what we are looking for give us a warm introduction. So there's a lot of attorneys and accountants and EDC and other different accelerators who say, hey, you sort of fit the profile for Jumpstart. I'll get an invitation to you. That helps us too, because we don't have the bandwidth to look at everybody. And I have to totally agree with Kim about this is a gut investment business. Okay, so the numbers may look right. But we're looking at the jockey, because we don't think that you can make it, and it's not, the team's never going to be ready. There's all sorts of holes in every early stage business. We understand that. We understand that risk. But if the team can't seem to make it happen, then we're not going to be interested, because we're putting all of our bets on the team. We know it will pivot. We know it will change. But can they do that themselves? Are they smart enough to listen to other people with good advice? Are they smart enough to chase the right horse? That's what we're investing in. And so when companies present to Jumpstart, we'll ask them a lot of questions, but we're testing you and your knowledge of the space. So we'll ask you, if the CEO doesn't understand the margins of the business, that's bad. That's a bad issue. It's only the financial person who understands it. All sorts of touch points, because you are the experts in your space. And if you, as the expert, don't really understand it well, it's hard for an investor to sort of follow up with an investment.
May I add one point to that? Is that for those people who were trying to start a company, you heard what Dr. Pinkett was saying, the odds facing you, you know. And that in most cases, you have to recognize that for the investors, and once you invest in a company, you should expect it to last a long time, longer than most American marriages, okay? So that to expect 1 or 2 investment and for the company to IPO, just simply not a very realistic goal. And to that, you know, if you look at it was Paul Graham's Y Combinator, and the statistics, the odds are really stacked against it. In an entrepreneur, you got 100,000 applicants, 500 and got accepted. Of the 500, 93% fail, 7%, which is 34, 35. And there was a dispute as to whether, and it captures all the successful company. Nonetheless, if you adjust the denominator, it still comes out to about 10%. So, you know, with a hard asset, most of the companies that fail, I think they fail not because they could have a very good CEO, good team, and yet they fail because the failure to recognize the acceptance in the market. And as I said, you really don't know until you get into it. And to the extent that once you're in it, the ability to pivot is very, very important. And I have seen a good CEO started out with certain strategies and morph into entirely different and make it a very successful company. And the second point that I think that those entrepreneurs have to recognize is that what I call, when you get some traction, I can use my cultural analogy on it, is called the 3 novice monk syndrome. You know, in the past, the novice monk will carry water from the bottom of the hill to the monastery upstairs. You know, when they grew, they hired 2. You know, that water will go out half the time. So I get 3 novice monks, no water goes up there. The similar situation in most startup, when they get some traction, the team are not focused and not pulling together. It's what I call a not my table syndrome in a restaurant. So you had a lot of dissipated energy, and in disarray, the CEO must be able to, pull them together. And even when you're successful, and the questions is always focus on the runway, focus, focus, and focus. And 3 priorities: sell, sell, and sell. But as soon as you run out of money, even a good strategy is going to face a lot of headwinds. And as Dr. Pinkett said, when you fail, it's important that you be able to recover and pivot very quickly.
Great. So for those of you who know me at all, you've probably actually heard me talk about dots versus lines. And what I'm really talking about generally is the fact that when an entrepreneur first pitches, you first meet them, they can tell you a great story, and they're going to show an arrow from where they are that's going to go off to some really great place. That's a dot. But when they come back and see you a year or 2 later, and they've actually achieved what they said they were going to achieve, they've now turned themselves into a line, and lines are much more investable than dots. Okay, so what I'd like to do is actually kind of flip things around a little bit and talk about some of the failures, some of the places where you made an investment or you made a pitch and it kind of really just totally fell flat. What did you learn from that? Because that's really kind of where did you learn from your failure? Tell us about and tell what you learned. Catherine, you want to start us off?
I think in terms of investors, what we've seen sometimes is we've seen a really great CEO who knows the space, seems like it's going to go well, has some kind of product going on. May not be a full team yet, because teams are actually now more important than the individual, because without a team, we've all decided that you can't move forward. And that wasn't the case a few years ago when angel investing first started. We thought a great CEO would make everything. And I think what happens is that CEO has missed the mark, can't deliver the sales, can't do anything. And so all the expectations that we've planted on that team and that individual have just gone to naught. Just the individual wasn't able to be resilient enough to bring in other people to pivot enough, or actually in some cases sort of got totally dejected and left everything alone. So that, I mean, I've seen that happen a couple times. It's sort of rare because you think you're one of the things that an investor thinks is that we think we can really understand the team and where it's going. And that's not always true. Again, it's a risk of the business at this early stage.
So a failure of a dot to turn into the line that you projected.
Yeah, I have a lot of stories around that, right? The one interesting observation, in pitching and seeking investment and interacting with both VCs and angels. One thing that again we're really privileged to experience with our current set of investors and in just general conversations with investors is a really good investor doesn't presume to know your space better than you know your space. They'll have the business basics and the foundation of a venture, right? And you definitely have to respect the investor for that. But the best investors, in my opinion, are investors who actually listen to the entrepreneur and allow the entrepreneur to explain the market and the business venture and the opportunity because the entrepreneur has actually invested 2, 3, 4, whatever years into the venture, into the market. They know the ins and outs. And in a 5, 10, 20-minute conversation, there's no way a VC or an angel is going to assess the actual opportunity. So I found that really savvy VCs, savvy angels, experienced experienced venture capitalists actually defer the market knowledge and the business knowledge to the entrepreneur, but integrate that with their general business know-how and based on their experience and so forth. So just an observation that I've had between successful conversations and successful relationships versus not so much. And obviously it requires a commitment to come to that outcome, right? But in terms of having a failure, we failed like in an amazing way. I won't mention the name of the angel group, but we did a pitch in New York City, and there were about 50 investors in the room, and basically I tanked. I totally tanked, and this was a great opportunity. It was actually my first at bat, and I just sucked that day. But pitched later at a second time with the same group, and had the total opposite effect. So the lessons learned there were many lessons, too much to speak on at this point. But one of the contributing factors to the second pitch being successful was me actually talking with and listening to the investors post the first pitch, and getting their input and advice on the areas of improvement, and that really contributed to the success, not just with that group, but with subsequent pitches. So yeah.
So Kim, you started off by talking about your first investment was a failure. What did you learn from that one? Or
well, that failure was just because out of pure ignorance about what investment is all about. I grew up in a greenhouse, and then all of a sudden I'm in the wild, and there's no more supporting system and advices. You invest as if you learn it academically how to invest in a company, and that was not difficult. I was investing with very good partners from the Pacific Northwest, and the deal was ink, and so to speak. As I said, it went wrong because the last minute, the company that was supposed to pay for it was unable to pay for it because they sold all the assets to the real estate company, the REIT, for that sales leaseback arrangement, and it went bankrupt. The asset was tied in court, and the board of directors came back and said that, sorry, we can't pay for it. Had I known about it, I would have structured it quite differently. When it break up non-performance, I would have recovered a lot more of my money back, except that I was able to write most of them off with my gains. And so in some sense, Uncle Sam, I was partner to my loss. But in terms of losses, there are plenty. And it usually points back down to, as Kathy was saying, is that the CEO and the team, the partnership team, risk is extremely high. And a lot of them in the early stages don't do what most of the larger funds do background check on entrepreneur. The basic premise is that if the entrepreneur cannot manage his own money, how do you think he could manage yours? And I have had deals that ran very well, and except that they run into some personal problem. The CEO is not focused, and that's another problem. So at the end of the day, one has to recognize that that's why it says a soft part is probably played the most important part in it. Not that the other ones, being able to select a good product in a good market. Of course, we all want to do that. And everybody's looking for home runs. And my philosophy is that, yeah, home run is good to have, but singles and doubles are just as important.
Yeah, and most angel groups these days will do a background check on any on the management team that they're investing in. It's cheaper to do a background check and then worry about it later on.
All right, so Kim, we're going to turn around back with you. If you had to give your best piece of advice to the entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about how to raise money from angel investors, what's your best piece of advice?
Okay, there are 2 points that even seasoned investors are not aware of, and I think Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong on that point, is that in the initial raising of money, it's a small amount. As I said before, if you raise it from friends and family, and you intend to keep your friend and your family, don't do that. That's one point. Yeah. And number 2 is that obviously smart money is important because they're able, as I said, in cases like that, you can provide help to the investors. The complexity comes is that because you have so many investors that you made so many deals with, and that it makes it difficult for you to raise money, and a lot of people just don't want the kind of headache to be involved in this kind of situation. So keep the balance sheet or the cap table clean. So there are 2 other points that in selling to the investors. One is the section, it's 1202, right? 1202 it was introduced by, how many knows there's a section 1202 here? Okay.
This is really important because it's important for you as it is
that's
the
what
investor.
I'm saying.
Yes.
I would tell the qualified investors, you know that when I'm successful, under Section 1202, that qualified small business investment, the gains are 100% tax-free, number 1. Number 2, on the cost side, if you structure it correctly in terms of the debt loss, okay, for filing a joint return, you can write off up to $100,000. So depending how you structure your presentation, so I will mitigate your risk. When I win, you don't have to worry about paying Uncle Sam. When you lose, we structure it in such a way that will mitigate your loss. Those are the 2 selling lines that I don't think most early stage people are aware of.
Excellent point. Sarush.
Any takeaways? One thing that I've observed over and over again, and it's definitely true in my case, is, from an entrepreneur's perspective, I find that when you give, you get back, 10x, and it's basically the way I operate. Is I'm a giver, not a taker, and I've found that I've won many games as a result of that. And I've also observed that with the most successful ventures and entrepreneurs and just individuals, generally speaking, you'll find that the givers really, really, really have a lot to give. And so my message to other entrepreneurs is don't be so much about me. I'm raising money. I need to do this. I need to do that. Help me. Always, we're all climbing this ladder. Some are above us, some are beneath us, and we're always trying to raise our arm up and try to get someone to pull down and pull us up and get that help. But What we should actually be more thoughtful about is the people that are beneath us on that ladder, and pull down and reach down and pull them up. And because when you do that, the people that you've pulled up, they may go above you, but you'll have established a relationship, and you'll possibly have made someone else successful, and you get that back in many, many intangible and tangible ways. So just a general message to other founders. Again, I've observed that we can be selfish, but that doesn't prove to be that good for us in the long run. So give more than you take. That's my takeaway.
Actually, I'm going to second that Suresh is saying, because early stage investing is what I call a contact sport. If you're not out there at events like this, some of it's random connections, finding someone who may be investing, finding someone who's not in your space but says, oh, I saw this investor. There's all these connections that occur, and you really need to be out there, because there's things going on in Philadelphia, there's things going on in New York, there's things going on in New Jersey. You don't have to, here in this state, we don't have to constrain ourselves to just the state. This event is a great event. You've seen investors here, you've seen early stage companies, and I've seen some of the best connections made between other early stage companies and each other. So someone said, I saw this group of people, they're just right for you, or I saw this investor who's only doing this but not me. People share all of that information. It's a very, very warm environment. You have meetups here. You have other opportunities to connect with early stage investors. The New Jersey Tech Council I'll always give a shout out to, because they have lots of events with investors and early stage companies. And keep that in mind, because you can't just send out a piece of paper to somebody and say, here, look at me, do you want to talk to me or not? But if I've looked at that, and I may have met the person and had a chance to talk to them briefly, I says, oh, this is more interesting than it is on the paper. Or this is something that I can't do, but I know the people they should talk to. I think a very helpful environment is what's going on out here.
And raising money is a very intense, labor-intensive business. You always try to raise money when you don't have to raise money. Otherwise, you really don't get good terms for it. All right.
Well, and to be honest, we have a great community here in New Jersey. New Jersey Entrepreneurship Network is represented here. The EDC, of course, New Jersey Technology Council. There's lots of good participants in New Jersey in the community, and hopefully more coming up. Do we have time for a few questions from the audience?
Yeah, we have a couple questions. Would somebody like to ask some? Okay, here you go.
Mr. Kim, 조은호, 안녕하세요.
I'm Chinese, by the way.
Ah, very good. Well, then my Korean didn't even work. It was worth a try, wasn't it? Okay. So here's the question. As entrepreneurs, we need access to more than just capital. Even though all of us are now talking about investment, we need access to knowledge, we need access to good advisors, and we need access to connections to sell our products and services. Would you work with somebody that is not currently looking for a check but just needs help?
In fact, I volunteer my service, and sometimes my wife is saying, oh, you're supposed to retire. I think if I said I retire, I probably would check out quickly. Yes, I do, and in fact, I enjoy doing that.
Just really want to say Kim definitely enjoys it, because we exchange emails at like 1:30 in the morning. So yeah, I know Kim enjoys it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How proactive are you with your investments? Do you take a board seat? Do you stay on top of the numbers? How do you monitor your investment?
Let me take this one. Jumpstart, if we're a major investor, sometimes we may be running the term sheet. We might take a board seat. If we're a minor investor, we're not necessarily going to be on the board. Although sometimes the lead investor may invite one of our members who has expertise in the space to be on the board. We usually ask for an observer seat, because the issue is it's not just the money, it's really what doors can you open, what clients can you help us with, how you can help us move forward. And if you take money without taking that kind of expertise, it's a big loss for you. So make sure you only take money from those who can continue to open doors and make other connections for you. That's actually worth more than the money, although it's hard to say that when you're in the middle of fundraising.
We have time for one more question about this lady over here.
Hi. I was an entrepreneur who started a magazine back in the 90s in New York covering the venture capital and the startup community. And it really was the Wild Wild West. And what has really impressed me today is how mature this is. For instance, angel investors were just people with money. They had no idea what they were doing. And so my question, well, and the entrepreneurs clearly didn't know what they were doing. But my question to you is, with what I perceive as this maturity, when you're looking at an entrepreneur or a management team, I hate to ask, does age matter, but what is the key experience that you're looking for in that entrepreneur?
I would say something that that you believe that they will make this a success. So it doesn't have anything to do with age, unless the age brings a lot of connections with it. So you don't write off people because of their age. Sometimes there's connections that open doors that you couldn't do at a younger age. So it's really based on their ability. If this is a person who did this in a corporation, never hustled for a startup in their life, and you can see that and you can hear that, then that may not be exciting or investable in your own mind. It really comes down to that person in the team. And so age is not, age can be good, age can be bad. It's not the only thing that people look at.
I echo that. Well, I look at it quite simply, you know. The chemistry is right. The person has a dream and believes in the dream, okay? And they have their own skin in the skin of the game. It could be sweat capital. It could be, you know, reputational issues. And I have to believe in it. In also in a product in a market that either I want to learn or more about, and that people would always advise me, invest in something you know. And I'm probably one of the contrarians, invest things that I don't know. But on the other hand, having said that, you know, I have not invested in hardware deals that require a lot of engineering knowledge to understand that. Nonetheless, the management principle is the same. So I tend to more like deals that, regardless of what vertical, that had a technology based on that. I had actually invested in healthcare field. I've not been that successful in it, even though my brief exposures in Medco, because the market is tough in some area. Hospital market is very, very hard to sell into. You know, I don't like to get into any application again into government. I don't think that the startup belongs there, you know, because most of the contracts are done by big institution. I don't like to deal with any agency that rely on year-to-year funding. Okay, those are critical signs that, you know, just stay away from.
So just kind of amplifying, I'd say that having entrepreneurs who have a certain level of maturity is absolutely required. Because it really gives them the depth of life experience to overcome the adversity and the challenges that they're inevitably going to face. You know, Randall talked about failure. Having someone who's basically tried it and failed a couple of times, that's actually a plus from investment, as long as they can talk about what they've learned from that experience and how they're going to be able to do better going forward. So I would say, you know, it's not a matter of age, but it is kind of a matter of finding the right person with the right skill set and the right story and the right ability to bring it forward.
In fact, I say failures sometimes could be a badge of honor because you bring along a lot of experience, like Dr. Pinkett was saying. That, you know, there was an article in Harvard Business Review, Harvard Business Group, written about 6 years ago by Grumper, Lerner, Schafskind, and Kofsner, but trying to get a handle on success as entrepreneurs due primarily to luck or to competence. And you know, one of the points I still remember that is basically saying that they have more successes when people who have failed before. You know, so that there were several points that they put out, and so I advise you to just read it and just to amplify some of the issues.
And what we're happy with, that they failed with somebody else's money, not our own, okay?
That's why I said that we have to understand the equivalence there to the skin and the dream, and that they have to have. I always believe that a hired hand in a startup is basically increases the chance of failure very quickly. It's not theirs. And I normally do not, even though they raise sufficient money, just in case they fail, we can change the CEO. But it's traumatic for the organization. You lose a lot of momentum, and it's just more difficult. It's difficult to make money and to get known in the market. That part you really don't know.
Okay, I think we're going to let that be the last question for this panel because it's another excellent panel showing up. But would like a hand for the panel that we have really excellent.
Thanks. So we started out this